People are good at making the digital nomad lifestyle look like a dream. You get to work from anywhere, and you get to experience incredible places. I tried this in Tokyo and failed. Here are the 5 mistakes I made and why I would still do this all over again. These mistakes cost me time, money, and productivity, but now I know exactly what works and what doesn't. The first mistake you should avoid is that your purpose with this possible adventure is not clear. When you are sitting at home, looking at flight prices, it's cold and gloomy outside. It gets very easy to start coming up with reasons for why you should book the flight. The reason for why you want to go can be personal, business-driven, or a mix of both, and that's usually where the problem begins. Are you considering this because of the experience itself, or because it will increase your professional output? From a digital nomad perspective, you need to prioritize your output, because otherwise it's just a vacation. This begins with being honest with yourself and the people that you're traveling with that this is not just a vacation to you. However, setting these boundaries gets especially hard when you're traveling with people who have taken time off and aren't facing the same struggles. My best tip for managing the conflict between experiencing a new place and managing your productivity is to set clear boundaries from the beginning. What is the bare minimum you need to get done each day to stay on track with your goals? What is this trip to you? Is it 80% work, 20% fun, 50-50, 20% work, 80% fun? What does this ratio look like to you? How much of the fun are you willing to give up for getting things done? Are you willing to pay for housing in a second location for 7 days, but only get 2 days worth of fun or experience from it, meaning that you'd be working the remaining 5 days? To me, that's not the best deal. Looking back on my particular situation, I wish I would have been more honest with myself about how my goal of experiencing Tokyo would negatively affect my productivity and energy. When you're trying to balance your workload with travel, be a bit conservative so you can actually enjoy the destination you're visiting to. So being clear about your purpose is really important, but you also need to align your purpose with your destination, and that's the next mistake. It's very easy to pick the wrong place. A lot of people do this because the places they want to experience are not the same places that would boost their productivity. However, there are many different activities that are connected to travel that can also be considered productive as long as they align with your long-term vision and your strategy. Traveling for networking purposes is great, but the number one takeaway here is that you need to choose a destination that supports your work needs and doesn't distract you from it. You also need to consider the costs of creating the environment that boosts your productivity. Your money will go a lot further in a destination like Southeast Asia than Japan, which means that you will get a lot better work environment for less and have much more fun in your free time. The $2,000 a month apartment that we rented in Tokyo was about 29 square meters, which is about 310 square feet for the Americans. It did have a desk, but it wasn't nearly as convenient as my home base. For instance, the Wi-Fi was not reliable enough. Getting better Wi-Fi in a short-term rental can be a quite time-consuming task, and you usually just end up living with what you have. However, as far as Tokyo apartments go, this was still a really good apartment for the price. The main problem was that we were never there. We were always out, taking 20,000 steps a day. In Tokyo, there is always new things to do, but at the same time, it's also one of the most work-oriented cities in the world. And if you ask the locals, most of their lives revolve around work. I asked myself many times, how is it even possible that I can't get work done here, when apparently 35 million people can? It's an interesting question because it exposes your weaknesses, and that's actually a great way to help you see them and manage them in the future. My desire to experience Tokyo had very little to do with Tokyo itself. It was more about fear. If you have a strong fear of missing out on experiences, you will do what you can to capture as much experience as you can within the given time frame. And that is likely to join you regardless of the destination, which in turn will sabotage your productivity. In my case, this trip showed me that I should really think twice before traveling when I actually need to get work done. To be honest, it's quite destructive to expose yourself to a place like Tokyo when you don't have the mental freedom to actually enjoy it. And what I learned is that when it comes to Tokyo and probably many other big cities around the world, the best thing you can do for yourself is choose one purpose and commit to it. And in my case, I would much rather spend time in Tokyo for fun than I do it for work. Once you have purpose and you have picked a destination that serves that purpose, it is time to talk about your discipline, because the next mistake you're likely to make is overestimating your discipline. The freedom of being able to work from anywhere changes the barrier between work and personal life from a physical one to a mental one. Your discipline is in most cases directly tied to the external consequences you're facing if you don't end up getting your work done. If you're employed, the risk of losing your job is usually enough to prioritize work. But what happens when you're the boss and you need to hold yourself accountable? I chose a destination filled with temptations, which required more discipline. This may sound obvious, but oftentimes you like the idea of experiencing a destination, and the reality is a lot different from what you expected. It's easy to downplay these challenges and not think decisions like these through. I get it, it's boring, and it feels like you're parenting yourself. But if you don't account for this in advance, you may find yourself producing less and lower quality work. 6 months from now, your output quality is what you will be judged on. If you're constantly thinking about work while you're traveling, but you're not doing work or enjoying your time while you're there, you end up failing at both. You burn out, you lose quality time with people you care about, and you're also not getting the results you wanted. Ask yourself, will you really be able to produce high quality work from anywhere? Or is that just wishful thinking? Is being in a place without temptations actually the best thing you can do for productivity? In my case, I have learned that the answer is yes. And by now, we have established the 3 key ingredients to succeeding with traveling and working at the same time: purpose, destination, and discipline. Your next mistake is that you can't really afford this. It's time to determine how much you can afford to slip up. When you're considering something like this, you shouldn't just look at your bank account and determine if it's a yes or no from there. You should also consider if you can afford to work less. Letting go of your current routine and establish a new one is costly. It takes a lot of mental capacity to establish yourself in a new place. You will also find physical and mental challenges that will drain your productivity. Stress, jet lag, diet changes, increased alcohol consumption, just to name a few. All of this translates to expenses. Time-wise, energy-wise, and consequently productivity-wise. What you can afford in this context depends on your risk tolerance and also to what extent this trip aligns with the purpose of your business. If you consider this trip a business investment rather than a personal trip, make sure that the return on investment that you get on your trip is high enough to justify all the costs that I just mentioned with taking the trip. Ask yourself, what does the relationship between your output and your income look like? Do you have clear external factors holding you accountable? If you don't have systems or people in place to cover you, you also need to ask yourself the following. Can you afford a drop in income? Can you afford a quality drop in whatever you produce? What about lost revenue, missed deadlines, missed opportunities, and delayed projects? Can you, at this stage, afford not earning money? Can you afford spending this much time and effort on something that does not align with your goals? If you want to ensure that you get things done, you need to find ways to motivate yourself to get them done. And if you need some help with that, I've actually created a 1-page summary that I'm going to share with you. And that also includes a few questions that you should ask yourself to prevent you from making these mistakes. It also includes my best tips to experience the destination and secure that you're getting your work done, based on my own past experiences of working remotely as a corporate lawyer. You'll find the link in the description below. The final mistake you could be making is not going, because despite the risks and the trade-offs that we have just talked about, this journey may still be worth taking. Sometimes you need to remind yourself that you only live once, and who knows if this chance will reappear. The danger of putting things like this off to later is usually that they end up not happening. Ask yourself, is there a way for you to manage the trade-offs that would still enable you to go and take this opportunity? The answer to this will look different to everyone, but I assume that the trade-offs that you're making will be more manageable and significantly smaller if you align this with your goals and plan ahead. There's a book called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins, one of the best books I've read in my entire life, by the way. It has changed my perspective on timing. The main idea in this book is that experiences have a best before date. So in my case, going to Tokyo now with my family and then extending the trip creates so-called memory dividends, which means that I will get to relive this trip in my mind for the next 50 years. If I wait until retirement or until my parents are significantly older, that would not be the same experience. It is very likely that they would be too old and that I would not even be able to travel to Japan with them. What is the point of optimizing your entire life around money if you aren't willing to spend that money on experiences with people that you care about? In my case, I wanted more freedom, which is part of why I left corporate in the first place. But when it came to the opportunity of joining my family to Japan and then extending the trip, I took weeks before I said yes. I chose between spending time with people I care about in Japan or working in Sweden. And the thing is, work has a way of coming back to you. You will always get more opportunities to work. It's just how our society is built. That's also what makes the opportunity to go to Japan rare, and I knew I would regret not going. To me, long-term memories are worth more than short-term losses, so I hopped on the flight. A younger version of me would have killed to be able to spontaneously go to Japan for the entire summer, and so would the 80-year-old version of me. Those are the people that I chose to listen to, instead of the anxious side of myself who is still struggling to allow herself to actually enjoy her life. When I really looked at this, the worst case scenario was temporary. Lost income, delayed projects. I can recover from all of that, but the missed time in Japan with my family and my fiancé, that's permanent. Now, if you have answered all these questions and still want to travel, go for it. Because now you have probably thought it through and you can prepare yourself better. I don't regret my time in Tokyo. In fact, I got exactly what I wanted from it. An incredible time in one of the most incredible cities in the world. My mistake was thinking that I'd be able to get things done while I was there. But here's what I've learned. The difference between this trip being a failure and the best trip of my entire life is not the trip in itself. It's how I frame it and what I do with the things I've learned. Every choice has a price, not just in money, but in terms of opportunity. The question is not whether the digital nomad lifestyle works. The question is whether it works for what you are trying to accomplish right now. Going forward, I will choose a balance between work and life that aligns better with what I want to achieve. A lot of people out there are selling the digital nomad lifestyle because it looks like they're living the dream, and they usually want you to buy their thing so you can do the same. But this lifestyle requires something most people won't admit: choosing between productivity and experience, instead of pretending like you can maximize both. If this helped you think differently about the digital nomad lifestyle, let me know and make sure to subscribe for more. Bye!